Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Creative Katie. Today we have another in the Index Card a Day 2023 series. In this one, I am going to share with you some of my time-saving tips so you can maximize your studio time. Before we get started, please subscribe to my channel. Help me grow the channel by hitting that subscribe button, clicking on the bell, and selecting the option to be notified of upcoming videos. So I am working on a prompt from week 2 called Superstition. I brainstormed black cat, and then I got the phrase, don't cross me. Then I went through my stash of materials out of the moment when I was planning and found some images of black cats. And I have these 2 different napkins. Now both of these came from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. You can go there and check out her stash of napkins and other mixed media supplies. So step 1 in saving time, plan ahead. Spend a little moment outside of the studio planning and organizing your materials. Now here's a little bit of a tidbit to maximize your products. Some napkins have these wonderful borders on them, and I don't plan on using the border for this one, but I am going to harvest the border by cutting it off as you see me doing here, and then it will be an Insta border in a future project, and you guessed it, that will save me time. This napkin here, I'm going to be using in an upcoming project, but you can see it actually has borders, so I can cut all these parts apart and use them as borders. The borders, so to save time, when I keep them organized, they are in these holders that I keep in my napkin binders, and I just put them in these, I think, baseball card holders, they're called. Easy to see, easy to find, and again, I'm saving time, so I have more time to create. So there are my 2 napkins, and I typed out the sentiment in several different fonts and in different sizes, and I print off the one sheet. So I don't have to go back and reprint. So I have my options when I audition it. Now here's a way that I'm saving time. For this ICAD challenge, I'm not using index cards. What I am using are card bases. These are some inexpensive ones that I got at Michael's, at a local craft shop. I can use watercolor ones or mixed media ones. Or I can even cut my own out of mixed media paper or cardstock. Now to prepare the napkin, I peeled off the excess and I glued it down with my fluid matte medium onto, you guys, recycled copy paper. If only one side's printed, I can use the other side for this purpose. I glued it on and let it dry. Time saver. I do that in one session. I might have several that I'm going to do it on, and then I go for a walk or I do something else and let it dry without me standing there watching it. And there I'm just showing that even that little piece of orange can be used to set off a sentiment. Now when you are fussy cutting, I hate fussy cutting, by the way, cut out the parts that are in between, like between the legs and between the tail, before you cut out the other parts. That gives more stability and will make it easier for you to cut out, and therefore takes you less time, and you're less likely to have an oops. Now I'm doing this in front of the camera for the sake of the video, but often if I have things in my stash that need to be cut out, I have them in a basket and I take it and I cut them out while I'm watching TV. And don't worry if your cutting isn't so perfect. Nobody knows what the original looks like, so you've got some leeway. So now that I have my focal image and my sentiment, I can play with the composition and decide, how do I want it? Do I want one cat? Do I want maybe this big cat? I love this big black cat so much, but I've used it, so I'm going to force myself not to use it, and I'm going to use this little one. Now this one came from a cocktail napkin, and they're relatively small, so I'm thinking I need more on a page to make it, give it the proper weight. So I'm playing with the composition now, additioning the pieces, and that's actually going to save me time later on because I'm going to have ideas of where it may go. Now at this point, I haven't made any firm decision on what exactly I'm going to do. So let's work on the background. Here's a great way to save time. I am using a gel print. I like the colors of this. This is quinacridone magenta and bright aqua. And so instead of getting out paints, I am just going to glue this gel print down using gel medium. And that's going to give me a jump start to this page. I want to get a straight edge here, but don't cut off too much. You won't, because if you're like me, sometimes you short yourself. So I just want that straight edge there. I want a straight edge here. This is torn edge. So you're saving yourself time because your background is already started, your color scheme has been picked, you don't have to start thinking which one do I want, and you don't have to clean it up. I'm not sure you're going to, I show this in the video, but my brush that I'm using with gel medium or fluid medium, I take, while I'm doing creating, I wrap it in a piece of saran wrap so it doesn't go in the water, and then I can just reuse it. I'm wasting less, the brush doesn't dry up, because I know I'm going to come back and I am going to be gluing the cats down, even if I'm only doing one ICAD in this session. No sense taking time to clean it if you're just going to be reusing it. And then I'm cutting off the excess. And I'm just checking that everything is glued down, every little corner and bit. So if you like my channel, if you find the videos helpful, please share it with your creative friends, subscribe, leave a comment, and help YouTube realize that this is something that you want to watch. There you go. I do wrap it in that saran wrap. Now, do you see where there's that border in there? I'm not too fond of it, so I'm just taking some quinacridone magenta or matching it to the gel print that I have and just rubbing the paint off. Really not too technical here at all. Now, if you don't have gel prints, you can buy gel prints. I have at NINNYSNAPKINS.com possibility packs, and in those possibility packs you have some color coordinated gel prints along with a grab bag or random sentiments that you can use in your creating. There's also some prompt and process cards, as well as some other interesting tidbits that you can add to your stash and use in your creation. So I'm putting it in this pouch so that I keep everything neat and tidy. Just adding more color. Now some parts of this don't have enough teal, and I wanted to bring up the teal just a little bit. So I'm going to take some of that teal on an acrylic block, wet it down, water it down a little bit, and then I'm going to do some smooshing on top. This is giving a very organic, free-flowing background. Lots of interest, but super easy. You could also use packaging to smoosh with, a piece of acetate, or turn the card upside down and use your tabletop on your craft sheet. Look at all that interest. Once I have what I like, I'm just going to get out my heat tool and set it. Now remember, all of this is acrylic paint. That means it's permanent. Now I want to add a little bit of contrast and a little bit of texture, and I'm going to do both of those things in one activity. I have this chicken wire reverse stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm putting thick gesso through the stencil just by rubbing it with my finger. This is giving, like I said, texture and contrast with the white, and it's adding white to my color scheme. So now I have quinacridone magenta, bright aqua, white, and I'll be adding a little bit of black. Well, the black comes from the black cat. And I'm going to use 3 cats, so I'm also going to put 3 areas with this detail. Using your finger to put thick gesso through the stencil. You don't get perfect stenciling, but for the purpose of texture and pattern in the background, it works. Now I've got some leftover gesso on this stencil, so I'm grabbing this mini book, it could be any book, and I'm just pushing it through the stencil, and I'm going to add texture to another page, which is, you guessed it, going to save me time when I create in that book, because I already have the texture added to the page. So it's a great idea to have some journal, be it a small one, a gel print journal, or whatever, on the side. I want to add a little bit black and play up the idea of the X's are crossing me. So I grab this stencil, Diamond Dash from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm putting black acrylic paint through the stencil with a makeup sponge. Now here, look what happened. I pressed a little too hard and it kind of made a bit too big of a mess underneath. But because it's all permanent underneath, I can just take a baby wipe, or in this case a microfiber cloth, spray it with water and take it off. As long as you don't rub too much, everything's good. So let's try again. This time I'll be a little more careful. So lesson learned, don't press down hard. Go slow and get the stenciling. And again, I'm not looking for perfect stenciling here. I just want those X's to kind of tie in with my sentiment. Don't cross me. And I'll introduce a little bit of black into my background. Now, if I had done this, if I was doing this again, I would do this part, the black, before I did the modeling, or before I did the gesso with the chicken wire reverse stencil. It just would be easier. because the white of the gesso would knock back any black that was underneath. But here I had to kind of work around it. I'm quite happy with my background, so I'm taking that makeup sponge that already had paint on it and using it to edge my page. Some people ask, when do you use a blending foam? When do you use the, shading technique? When do you use a makeup sponge? I use whatever I already have out. I've got paint on this makeup sponge, so I'm using it. One less thing to clean up. It's right handy. I don't have to go grabbing something else. So again, I'm saving time in a multitude of ways. And right now we have a background that you can put a multitude of focal points on this. So if you aren't interested in doing the cat like I am, you could put a flower on there. You could put a variety of things. Go through your focal images and audition them on this background. I'm loving how this works. The yellow of the eyes of the cats really shine. I cut off that orange part so it's not reading Halloween necessarily. And now I'm going to play with my sentiment. I chose a font and a size, a font that was bolder, and a size for the font that was a little bit bigger because I wanted to play up the white and the black. I wanted to have a presence on the page. And I'm placing the sentiment so your eye starts at the top and it swerves down. Don't cross me. The organization of where I put everything helps your eyes flow across the page. Just trimming off a little bit of that excess white, the perfectionist that I try not to be. Now, if you don't have a napkin that has cats and you can't access one, there are free printables. Supercoloring.com is one place that I go quite often. Putting a little bit of gel medium underneath and on the back of the cat, and I'm gluing it down. And I'm going to do that with the sentiment and everything else. I like using gel medium for the cat because there's a napkin, there's two layers there, the napkin and the copy paper. The sentiment is just copy paper, so I could switch to fluid medium for that, but I'm not taking something else out. The texture of the thick gesso isn't as much as you would get with modeling paste, and so I find it easier to glue things on top of. You're not fighting that texture so much. Most of this video I've kept in real time. If you like videos with real time, please let me know in the comments. Often I speed them up for the sake of ease and making good use of your time. But if that's something a lot of people want, that's something I can do more of. Here I'm taking my angle brush and I'm shading around the focal image and the sentiment to make that stand out. And really the focal image is the sentiment and the cats here. That all works together. There's 3 and 3 and 3. Do you see the theme here? Is this a color scheme you could use? Do you like this? I challenge you, if this isn't your comfort zone in colors, try it. Now, I got this glossy accent in a subscription box from Ninny's Napkins, and you can go to her website. There is a link in the description box and a coupon code. And she does offer subscription boxes as well as lots of mixed media art journaling supplies. But this is the very first time that I'm using glossy accents. You saw me shake this, right? So here I give a very generous amount, and then I think, oh, that's too much. And actually, I like the first one. It was more dimensional. It comes out easily from the bottle, and I'm just making the eyes glow. It's dimensional. It just adds that little extra something. I completely fell in love with this stuff, and I can't wait to find more uses in my art. Making sure that it's clean, the tip. Then I decide to read it, and it says, do not shake. Okay, mistake number 1. And do not heat to dry. So I'm just going to set that aside and let it dry. But I love the effect. That it gave. So there is the finished ICAD for the prompt superstition. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you give something that you've seen in this video a try, be it using a napkin, using thick gesso through a stencil, the color scheme. Let me know what you use. Until next time, go get creative.